At first, it was only a whisper among the stargazers, men and women who stayed awake through the night, watching the endless sky. They noticed that certain stars vanished not for a moment, not hidden by clouds, but gone, swallowed by something unseen. Telescopes searched deeper and saw shadows moving across the heavens. Shadows so large they covered constellations and made the night look broken. Many called it illusion. Many called it tricks of the eye. But then more and more saw it. The news spread. Across cities, across countries, people filmed the sky with their phones, showing entire clusters of light gone, replaced with an unnatural blackness, as if pieces of the universe had been erased, and fear began to spread quietly in homes and schools. And streets governments tried to calm the world with soft voices, saying that this was natural, that it was dust clouds or unusual cosmic events, but behind closed doors the truth was, burning scientists and military officers had already seen the movement clear and sharp. These were not stars dying. These were ships, colossal ships, moving in formation, like armies in the dark, moving toward Earth, without signal, without sound. They came with silence and purpose, and the weight of their presence pressed on the hearts of those who knew the truth. The first clear images arrived from deep space telescopes, showing outlines of structures that dwarfed any city on Earth, sharp edges gleaming against the starlight with veins of glowing energy. Stretching across their hulls, they were not comets, not asteroids, not tricks. They were warships, an Imperial fleet larger than anything humanity had ever imagined, and they were heading straight for Earth. As the images leaked, panic spread faster. Then firestock markets collapsed, cities filled with riots, shelves emptied as people hoarded food and water, and yet through all the chaos, the sky remained the greatest terror. For each night, the stars dimmed more as the fleet drew closer, swallowing more of the heavens, until entire constellations disappeared into the moving wall of black in Washington and Moscow, and Beijing leaders met in emergency rooms, their voices low, their faces pale. No one spoke of peace. No one spoke of negotiation. Because no messages had come, no signals, no warnings. Only silence, and the silence was worse than threats. Because it meant the decision had already been made. The fleet was not coming to talk. The fleet was coming to erase. Military forces scrambled. Jets filled the skies. Navies took to the oceans. Missiles were armed. Satellites watched and waited. But none of it mattered because the numbers were too great, the scale too overwhelming. And as the days passed, the shadow grew so large that even children could point to the night sky and see the black mass drifting across the stars. Parents lied with shaking voices, saying it was nothing, saying everything would be fine. But in their own hearts, they knew the truth. Earth stood no chance then. Came the night when the fleet arrived, not hidden by distance. Not a shadow in the far sky, but clear and undeniable, an ocean of warships, stretching from horizon to horizon, their hulls blacker than the void, their lights red, and merciless cities fell silent. People stood in streets gazing upward with terror as the stars vanished, completely replaced by the fleet above. And for the first time in human history, the entire planet felt the same breath of fear, the same weight of doom. The Imperial fleet had come to Earth not with words, not with demands, not with mercy, but with annihilation written in its silence. And in that moment, when the heavens themselves went dark, humanity realized the end had already begun. The fleet hung above the Earth, like a ceiling of death. And though no words came, every person could feel the meaning written in that silence. The message was not spoken in language, but in the sheer scale of their presence. And then, without warning, the first act of communication arrived not as sound, but as fire beams of pure energy erupted from the warships, lancing across the sky, striking the satellites that circled the planet in a matter of minutes. Every eye in orbit was blinded, every channel cut, entire networks went dark, leaving nations blind and broken before they could even respond. Jets scrambled into the air. But their systems failed as signals jammed and engines shut down. Tanks rolled onto highways, but their electronics sparked and died, missiles locked, onto nothing. Governments tried to send orders, but phones, radios, computers all turned to silence, as if the planet itself had been muted. Panic spread faster than fire through the cities as lights flickered out across continents, power stations burning. From precision strikes, water treatment plants exploding, leaving millions in darkness and thirst and fear. Hospitals went black with their machines silent. Children cried as parents stumbled through dark streets looking for answers, while overhead, the ships did nothing more than watch their red lights pulsing like eyes that never blinked in that dreadful quiet, only broken by the thunder of collapsing grids. Scientists screamed that this was only the beginning, that the fleet was disabling humanity piece by piece, cutting the nerves before crushing the body, and still no words, no demands, no declaration, only the cold patience of predators circling prey. Then the second strike came. A single warship descended through the clouds, its hull glowing with red lines that split the night sky like cracks of fire. It moved with a slowness that was worse than speed. Deliberate, unhurried, unstoppable. The ground shook as it passed above. Cities' windows shattered as its shadow covered entire. Blocks, people dropped to their knees in terror, while soldiers fired useless bullets that sparked against the dark armor. The ship came to hover above New York, casting its shadow across the towers, its presence alone enough to freeze the city in silence. Then the beam came, not fire from the sky, but an image, a vision projected across the heavens for all humanity to see, across every dead screen, across every blank wall, across the very air. Itself, people saw worlds burning, planets shattered, fleets broken, and then came the sound not of voices, but of screams, endless and unending billions crying in silence as their homes turned to ash and their skies fell into flame, and then words appeared written in the languages of earth we erase. What resists? And humanity stood frozen, staring at the truth that no surrender would save them, no negotiation would matter. This was not conquest. This was erasure. The ship above New York rumbled as its lights flared brighter, the streets filled. With people screaming, running, praying, soldiers aimed rockets that never fired, police shouted for order that never came, mothers clutched children, fathers raised fists against the sky, but nothing could stop what was coming. And as the warship loomed over the city, the rest of the fleet stirred above the planet, their weapons glowing ready, and the message was clear. The time for silence was over. The time of fire had begun. The night after New York fell under the shadow, the world trembled, but in the silence of fear, a spark of defiance began to burn. Scattered generals in bunkers buried deep beneath mountains called one another on lines the invaders had not yet cut. Old analog radios forgotten for decades were brought to life and carried voices across oceans, voices that shook with fear but carried iron in their tone. Humanity would not kneel. Not yet. Scientists, huddled in broken laboratories powered by generators, dug through their oldest systems, searching for ways to fight without the satellites, without the computers, without the machines that had already been killed by the fleet. They spoke of weapons left in storage, weapons designed in another age when the Cold War had frozen the world with dread, nuclear fire missiles hidden in silos, submarines roaming the seas. Bombs powerful enough to shatter cities. The invaders had blinded the earth, but perhaps they had not yet found everything in the deserts. Of Nevada, an Air Force base came alive, pilots climbing into jets stripped of digital systems, replaced with old analog gauges hastily rewired by trembling hands in Russia. Trains carried hidden weapons across the frozen land while soldiers swore oaths to fight, even if it meant death in secret bunkers. Engineers whispered about old experiments, railguns, particle beams, chemical weapons, things once locked away as too dangerous, now considered the only hope. And while leaders argued over who should command, who should strike first, The people themselves began to resist. Civilians armed with rifles and gasoline-filled bottles patrolled their streets, refusing to wait for destruction to descend. Entire cities built barricades as though they could hold back giants with brick and fire in the sky. The fleet began to move again. Smaller craft detached from the massive warships, sleek black machines shaped like blades of night. They descended on the oceans, the mountains, the cities sweeping down with eerie silence. And then the first shots were fired not by the invaders, but by humanity in the ruins of New York. A line of soldiers launched rockets at the descending craft. The explosions lit the dark sky, and though the alien armor did not break, though the machines did not fall, the crowd below roared with sudden hope. For the first time they had struck back across the globe. Other cities followed. Missiles fired from hidden silos streaked into the heavens, leaving trails of smoke. And nuclear warheads roared upward toward the looming fleet. The earth shook with the thunder of its own defiance, and for a heartbeat, it seemed possible for a heartbeat. Humanity believed the invaders could bleed, but the sky answered with merciless fire beams of red energy cut through the night, meeting the missiles before they reached their marks. Explosions lit the clouds with terrible suns. Entire silos turned to glass. Entire cities crumbled under the counter-strikes in the oceans. Submarines that launched their hidden weapons were sliced apart by unseen blades of light, leaving only boiling water on the surface. And yet, even as millions died, even as the air burned, even as the world shook with collapse, humanity did not stop. Old radios continued to hum, carrying desperate orders across nations. Men and women refused to kneel, even as the shadows grew larger. They knew they stood no chance, but they also knew something greater. Something the invaders did not yet understand. Humans could endure, humans could resist, humans could fight even in the face of the impossible. And as the night fell again and the fires burned across the continents, a single truth spread from bunker to street, from soldier to child. The war had begun, and humanity would not die quietly. The fires of resistance spread, but so did the wrath of the fleet. As the days passed, entire cities fell one after another. New York was the first, but it was not the last. London awoke to shadows blotting out the dawn as ships descended upon the Thames, their beams slicing bridges into molten stone and steel. Paris was torn apart as monuments turned to dust, and the skies above screamed with fire. Tokyo's towers collapsed under waves of invisible force. As people fled into tunnels that became graves, when the ground itself cracked under alien power, no nation was spared, no border protected. The enemy came with the same cold silence each time, descending like gods with no mercy, watching humans scream and run as though studying insects before crushing them. The armies of Earth fought with all they had. Tanks roared down streets, missiles fired from hidden hills, jets screamed into the air, but all were cut down with precision. Weapons turned to ash before they could strike. Soldiers burned in blinding light before their screams reached the air, and yet humanity refused to stop fighting in Moscow. Troops fought in blizzards with rifles and rockets, their city blazing red against the snow. In Brazil, militias clashed with drones in the jungles, their fires painting the night sky. And in Africa, entire villages rose together, armed with nothing but courage, standing against machines that erased them without hesitation, and still word of defiance carried across radios, carried by whispers in the ruins. Humanity had no victories to boast. Yet each spark of resistance showed the enemy something they had not expected. The will to fight without hope of winning as the days turned to weeks. The death toll rose into the billion cities. Once bright with light became oceans of ash smoke covering the skies across continents. Forests burned, rivers boiled, entire coastlines shattered under the weight of the invaders' bombardments. People began to live like ghosts underground in bunkers, caves, and ruins. Whole families surviving on scraps in the dark, whispering stories of the old world to children who had never again seen a clear sky above them, and still, even in despair, some dreamed of revenge, Scientists hidden in mountains tested old weapons, digging through forgotten blueprints, searching for cracks in the enemy armor, while hackers using equipment built from scraps tried to send signals into the void, praying some distant ally would hear them. And yet the enemy showed no sign of weakness, no moment of hesitation. Their ships remained untouched above the earth, their soldiers faceless and unstoppable, their weapons flawless, and merciless humanity seemed destined for erasure. But deep beneath the ruins of Washington, in a hidden bunker, leaders and generals spoke of one final chance, a weapon not of this earth, something discovered decades before and buried in silence because it was too dangerous for men to wield. They whispered of the relic, the object unearthed in Antarctica, found frozen in the ice, older than humanity itself, an artifact that pulsed with energy no human science could explain. They had locked it away, fearing it could destroy the world. But now the world was already ending, and so they spoke of bringing it to life, not knowing if it would save them or finish what the invaders had begun. And as the skies burned and cities crumbled, the order was given to awaken the relic. Beneath the frozen wastelands of Antarctica, a secret long buried began to stir as soldiers and scientists pushed deeper into the cavern that had been sealed for decades. Their breath turned to mist in the icy air, their hands trembling, not only from the cold but from the weight of what they had come to awaken. At the heart of the cavern lay the relic, a massive structure, half machine, half stone, pulsing faintly with light, as though it were alive. Its surface carved with symbols. No human could read its edges, glowing with a rhythm like a beating heart. When the team activated the old generators around the chamber, lights flickered and the relic seemed to respond, the glow brightening as if it had been waiting all these years for. A call to rise. Scientists whispered in awe that it was not human, not alien in any form they had studied before, but something older, something stranger. Perhaps a weapon, or perhaps a key to something beyond imagination. The generals did not care. They saw only a chance, a final hope to turn the war that humanity was losing above them. The skies were still burning, cities falling one after another. But down in the ice, the relic awakened with a hum that shook the cavern walls. Screens lit up, with readings no human device should have been able to measure, showing energy levels, climbing beyond anything nuclear or chemical. The ground itself trembled, as if the earth feared what was about to be unleashed, and then the relic moved for the first time in perhaps 1,000 years, great panels, unfolding like the wings of some sleeping giant, rising from the ice to reveal a core of light so bright it blinded the soldiers, who shielded their eyes in terror and awe. A sound followed, deep and resonant, not spoken by any voice but pressing directly into their minds, words in no human language, yet understood perfectly by all who heard. Rise, defenders. It said, rise or be erased, and the humans shuddered, knowing the relic was aware it was alive and it had chosen to speak to them. Weapons were hastily trained on it by frightened soldiers, but the generals barked orders to lower them. They could not afford to waste the chance. Whatever this thing was, it had power and humanity needed. It more than fear could allow. Scientists stepped forward, speaking into microphones, explaining the war, explaining the invaders, explaining the billions dead and billions more who would die unless the relic acted. And for a long moment it was silent, only the pulsing of its light filling the cavern. Then the ground shook again, and the relic sent out a wave of energy that raced across the ice, out into the oceans, up through the atmosphere, into the void of space, invisible to human eyes, but surely seen by the invaders above, because their ships shifted in orbit, their formations tightening as though preparing for something new. The relic turned its light toward the humans again, and the voice returned, not of mercy, not of comfort, but of command. You fight still, though you cannot win. You endure, though you cannot stand alone. You are chosen. The humans stared in shock as the relic began to create from its core shards of light, solidifying into weapons like nothing they had ever seen. Rifles, cannons, armor, all glowing with the same strange pulse. The relic offered them tools to fight weapons beyond human design. and the generals wasted no time ordering their soldiers to arm themselves. The first man to lift one of the weapons felt it hum in his grip, felt power course through his veins, and when he fired into the cavern wall, the beam of energy tore through solid rock as if it were paper. A new kind of war had just begun, the relic had awakened, and humanity had been given fire from the stars. But as the soldiers celebrated deep in their hearts, they knew such gifts never came without cost. The skies above Earth blazed with fire. As the Imperial fleet descended in full strength, their ships blotting out the stars, their weapons, charging for the final strike that would erase humanity forever. But this time, the humans were not the same desperate defenders who had burned in their cities. This time they carried weapons forged from the relic, each rifle humming with light, each armored soldier glowing with strange energy as though the relic itself flowed through their veins from hidden bases and broken ruins. Humanity rose in waves, striking back with fury. The first clash came above Washington, where alien warships unleashed beams of annihilation, but were met by human jets retrofitted with relic cannons, their blasts tearing through the hulls of the invaders' ships that had once been untouchable, exploded in flames, scattering debris across the sky. The world below erupted in cheers and fear and rage as battles ignited everywhere across Europe, across Asia, across the oceans. Humanity rose together. Tanks outfitted with relic cores thundered across ruined streets, firing beams that cut enemy machines in half. Drones, empowered by relic signals, swarmed the skies, outmaneuvering alien fighters. Soldiers once armed with rifles that could do nothing now fired streams of light that tore holes in the armor of the enemy troops. The invaders staggered for the first time in the war, their formations breaking their cold silence, now filled with strange mechanical cries that echoed across the battlefields. The humans fought with desperation and belief, as though every child lost, every city burned, gave strength to their hands. And still the relic spoke within the minds of the soldiers, guiding them, directing them, whispering of patterns and weaknesses in the enemy fleet. They struck where it told them, and every strike drew blood from the once perfect armada. But the fleet was not broken. Yet its core ships, larger than mountains, unleashed storms of fire that tore through entire regions. Cities already ruins were burned into craters. Oceans boiled and skies split with lightning as alien fury unleashed all its might. The humans fought back, but they bled in oceans. Men and women burned in the very weapons they had trusted. Even relic power could not protect all, and yet they did not fall. They held the line in New York where towers of smoke reached. The Heaven soldiers fought street to street, blasting enemy war machines into wreckage in Cairo. Civilians stood with weapons glowing in their hands, holding bridges against drones in Beijing. The skies lit with a storm of fire as fighters and alien ships tore one another apart above the ancient city. The war had become total. And still the relic grew brighter, its voice rising like thunder, calling humanity to strike one final blow. It directed them to the heart of the Imperial fleet, a colossal dreadnought black as night, armed with cannons that could split the earth in half, the flagship of the invaders, the source of their command. It loomed above the planet, ready to unleash a fire that would end the world. The relic's voice roared in. Every soldier's mind now strike together, strike or be erased, and humanity answered every surviving jet, every tank. Every soldier turned their fire upon. The dreadnought relic beams cut through the darkness, missiles screamed, engines roared as the sky became a storm of light. The flagship retaliated, its cannons blasting waves of destruction. Whole battalions vanished under the fire, but still the humans pressed on, unwilling to fall. And then the relic itself rose from the ice breaking, free from the Antarctic ground, lifting into the sky like a god of light, its wings unfolding, its core blazing, brighter than the sun. The invaders turned their fire upon it, but their beams dissolved against its shield. The relic struck once with A blast of pure energy that tore through the flagship's armor, cracking the massive vessel in two. The humans unleashed everything they had in that moment, and with a final scream of fire and rage, the dreadnought exploded in a chain of light that lit the heavens brighter than day. The Imperial fleet faltered without its core ships, their formations collapsing, their silence breaking as they began to retreat into the void. The humans stood in the ruins of their world, weapons in hand, watching, as the enemy that had come to erase them finally fled the skies. The earth was scarred. Cities broken, billions lost, but humanity remained, and for the first time in the war, they looked up at the stars not with fear, but with fire, knowing they had been tested, knowing they had survived, and knowing that the relic had chosen them not as victims, but as warriors who would rise again.